Welcome to this TransformU for June 2020. I am Patrick Coffin. So happy to have my good friend, one of the top writers in the English-speaking language. This guy's just so rich and wise, and his latest book is called Immortal Combat, just in time for street violence and lockdown, hysteria and groupthink, much else besides, confronting the heart of darkness. Father Dwight Longenecker, welcome.
Thank you.
If I had the sound of a stadium applauding, you would get one, sir.
Yeah, well, you can put that soundtrack in there if you like.
Now they'll really believe us when they hear it. You are unusually prolific. I would like to sit down with you and figure out how you write so many books so well. There are a lot of people out there who are one book men, right? You know, they have one insight and they kind of run it into the ground. But each of your books comes at the one true thing, the most important thing from several different angles. And this one is, I won't say it's a light read. I mean, you have levity and a love for alliteration as I do, so it's very readable. But it's heavy content. Why this book now?
Well, I really wanted to try to communicate some of the stuff that I've picked up from French, the French thinker René Girard, and the books about René Girard, and most of them are pretty weighty, you know, with lots of words in, and also. I was referred on to the German philosopher Max Scheler, who was a phenomenologist and next generation after Nietzsche. And Max Scheller's philosophy influenced Pope St. John Paul II and St. Edith Stein, who were philosophers and very much were influenced by him. So he's an important thinker. But I really have a passion for trying to communicate maybe complex and profound ideas to ordinary people, the kind of people that you and I might speak to, for instance, at men's conferences all around the country. So this book had a particular audience. It's not only for them, of course, but these are the kinds of guys that are passionate about their faith. They want to know more. They want to learn more. Maybe their educational level is not sky high, but they're not stupid. They're just, you know, they're really wanting to learn more and soak up more. So I wrote for that kind of an audience. So it's a book without lots of footnotes or erudite references, but there is a lot of background and research in there, which I hope has come through effectively.
Maybe I can see a book that you could write called René Girard for the Rest of Us.
Maybe
René Girard without tears.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, C.S. Lewis is one of my great sort of influences, and he explains in various places. It was one wonderful essay he wrote based on a talk he gave to seminarians and evangelists and preachers about how to communicate the gospel and how to communicate important ideas, complex and sometimes profound and complicated ideas in ways for the ordinary man and woman in the pew.
And just a bit of biography for folks who aren't aware or who missed our interview last Christmas on the Mystery of the Magi. You were born in the United States, spent many years in England, went back as a fundamentalist Christian to Bob Jones, ended up studying at Oxford, and with a love of story structure, storytelling, and screenwriting. That obviously comes through in this book.
What happened was, after I became a Catholic and left the ministry of the Anglican Church, I trained as a screenwriter because I was married with a young family, and there was no guarantee that I would be a Catholic priest at all. And so I had to sort of change horses in midstream. And so being interested in literature and storytelling and drama and so forth, I began training as a scriptwriter, realizing that that's where stories are told in our society, and learned an awful lot about from Joseph Campbell, Christopher Vogler, and these other masters of storytelling and story structure, and realized that the story structure and the characters and the use of mythology resonates an awful lot into our ordinary lives, into our spiritual lives, and into our Catholic life. And indeed, if any expression of the Christian faith is full of story and full of drama and full of historical sagas and so forth, it's the Catholic faith, with our reliance not only on Scripture but the stories of the saints and so forth. So these are all things which are resonating around and coming out in the stuff that I write.
You see a lot of broadsides against the writings of the Gospels and the story of Jesus Christ, and the objection runs like this. Look, the story of the dying and rising avatar who's betrayed and who sort of overcomes death. You see this in the Bhagavad Gita. It's in Buddhism. It's in Confucianism. It's in pagan poets. The Christ myth is just one more among many that's deep in the archetypal dream world of humanity. Was it G.K. Chesterton? I know you inadvertently answer that objection here. Was it The Everlasting Man, where Chesterton turns that kind of right side up and says, no, you'd expect this dream of a dying and rising avatar, but this myth, capital M, is the only one that's historical. I know that's a Tolkien idea too.
Yeah, I'm sure G.K. Chesterton did point that out somewhere. The one I remember, though, is where in one of C.S. Lewis's essays, he says, of course, there are connections with all the great myths and the great religions of the world, of paganism and all the religions. He said, I would worry if there were not actually similarities and links, because the similarities and the links validate and authenticate the Christian story. This holds hands with the famous conversation Lewis had with J.R.R. Tolkien when they were talking about myth. And Tolkien emphasized to Lewis that the Christian story resonated in his heart and his emotion with a thrill and with a curiosity as much as the ancient pagan myths did. It worked for him in the same way, he said. And then Tolkien said, but with this major difference, this myth really happened. And this shook Lewis up. And especially Lewis then relates the tale that he was walking through the common room in Magdalen College in Oxford. And one of the professors, a noted atheist, was sitting there reading his newspaper, and something came up, and he sort of muttered, it looks like this pagan myth of the dying, rising God really might have happened at some point. And he was referring to the Easter story, and this also shook Lewis up, because here was this atheist who was echoing what Tolkien had said to him. And so it's the same thing. And I talk about this for a bit also in my book, The Romance of Religion, how the great myths and the great stories of all antiquity and all of culture, not just the classic culture of Greece and Rome and Western Europe, echo and reverberate back into the Christian story. And then that's helps to make it prove its authenticity and make it seem, this has deep roots here. This is something true about this.
Bryan Singer, the writer and director, who's a very bad man, by the way, of The Usual Suspects, stole a line from C.S. Lewis and put it on the lips of Kevin Spacey, another predator. The devil's greatest victory is to convince the world that he doesn't exist. I understand that to be a line from C.S. Lewis.
Probably from Screwtape Letters, yeah.
Because a lot of this goes to another problem we see even in the church, unfortunately, and that is the belief that evil is it's a literary myth. Father Arturo Sosa, the head of the Jesuits, has said this publicly, that Satan is a theological construct. It's not an entity, not a fallen angel. That belongs to kind of a primitive way of describing the mystery of evil, which he didn't define.
Yes, in the church we have these theologians and churchmen who are saying exactly that, that there is no reality to the devil. The devil is a mythological figure to represent human evil and so forth. And the same people are actually downplaying human evil. I've always been astounded at the way progressives can look evil straight in the eye and then say, well, it's really just a result of a bad upbringing, or if only this person had better nutrition, they wouldn't have been like this,
Yeah.
And the progressive myth that we're getting better and better in every way, and they perpetuate this through the 20th century, which has been the most bloodthirsty, genocidal, murderous century that humanity can remember. And still the progressives with stars in their eyes will say, oh yes, but we all really are golden at heart, and if only we had a better education, or we learned to tie our shoes earlier, we wouldn't be like this, And it's so weird. It's so wearisome. When you find people in the church saying this as well, it's astounding, especially Catholics who, if anybody needs an exorcism, they don't call the Methodist minister. I'm sorry, no offense to Methodists, but they call the Catholic priest. And here in the Deep South, as a Catholic priest, I've had people call the parish for some sort of paranormal disturbance. And when I go around, I'll say, well, what church do you go to? Well, I go to the Baptist church. Why didn't you call your pastor? I did, but he couldn't do anything. He told me to call you.
Right.
So the Catholic priests are the ones we're the ones who are the only ones dealing with exorcism, and yet we find our leaders and our theologians saying, "Oh, well, it's not really real."
Yeah,
well,
that's true.
I'm witnessing exorcism. I can tell you it's real.
and that's the origin of the Blatty novel, which became the film. It was a Methodist who said, "Look, I'm out of my depth here. You have to go with the big guns, and the big guns wear Roman collars." One influencer, speaking of myth and the dying rising hero, is Joseph Campbell, and you and I have spoken off air about Campbell and his influence on storytelling, especially Christopher Vogler, who's one of the top screen doctors in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And Campbell has always been a frustrating thinker to me because he bears the whiff of the ex-Catholic. I understand he was raised Catholic, as everyone was in the extraordinary form of the Latin Mass. And you heard something, might be apocryphal, might be true, about his return on his deathbed to the faith. Talk about Joseph Campbell.
Yeah, I was doing a conference for some deacons in New England, I think Connecticut or somewhere, and I was talking about the use of story and the use of myth and the use of symbolism in the homilies to be able to relate to them and make their homilies better. And over the lunch break, one of the men came up and said to me, "Well, thank you for what you said, Father. I've actually been a student of Mircea Eliade, if that's how you say his name, the great anthropologist and student of myth in University of Chicago."
Right.
And he said Eliade was friends with Joseph Campbell, and that it was related to this deacon that on his deathbed, Joseph Campbell called for a Catholic priest to come and be reconciled to the church. So okay, it's 2 or 3 steps removed from eyewitness account, and maybe it's gossip, but it's an interesting story. And I think, knowing what I know about Campbell, his Catholicism in his early days in childhood was actually very deep and very sincere, and that's why he loved myth, and that's why he went down the path of mythology, because he felt that his Catholic faith pre-Vatican II was the one religion in the world, in the modern world, where they were still practicing ceremony and ritual and understood in a deep liturgical way the effect of myth and the deep effect of myth on the subconscious and the rituals of confession and absolution and all these things. And then Vatican II came along, and Campbell said, they threw the whole thing out the window. They're the only ones that had it, and they threw it out the window and turned their churches into what looked like dentist waiting rooms, and turned the priest into a game show host. He was furious.
Yeah. And the altar replaced by a table.
Yeah, and the holy mystery of the sacrifice of the Mass turned into a Happy Meal, and he really, I think that's one of the reasons he left the faith. I'm glad he was reconciled if he was.
Yeah. There's it's an arcane argument, and most Catholics don't think about it, but it has to do with the status of the one perfect sacrifice of Jesus on the cross. If it's one perfect sacrifice, that means you don't have to do it again, and yet here the Catholic Church claims that the Holy Eucharist is a representation of that one sacrifice. I think we've talked before about this, Father Dwight, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, and there's not an answer to this, but with this COVID lockdown and 98% of the church excluded from celebrating this Mass, priests and bishops can, but all we can do is watch on a pixelated screen known as my laptop. Do you think the ensuing violence that has pummeled most urban centers with the help of the media is in some dim causal way connected with the disappearance of the Mass in the life of 98% of the faithful? Does that make sense?
I do, but I want to take a moment to just explain what I really believe about the sacrifice of the Mass, and which is the teaching of the Church and has been, but so many Catholics have forgotten it.
Yeah.
And that is that when the priest celebrates the Mass, he is bringing into the present moment this cosmic event that took place outside Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. And that cosmic event, evil, the power of evil, was defeated and crushed by the Son of God. And that is what I like to call a cosmic moment. In other words, it transcends time and it transcends place. It actually links with both this world and the next. And sometimes you see it in these old Catholic prayer cards. You see there's a picture of the priest saying the Mass, and then invisibly above him is all the angels, and the clouds are opening up, and you see heaven itself.
Yeah.
But this is a reality. This is what I call a cosmic moment, which takes place. And this victory over evil is brought into the present moment through the sacrifice of the Mass. And You're right. All the people who are there are celebrating that and participating in it with the priest. Now, when I say participating, I don't just mean they're singing all the songs and clapping and holding hands, okay? No, I
Hmm.
don't mean
Hmm.
participation like that. I mean they are participating with the depth of their heart, and their whole being, their whole subconscious and everything is participating in this cosmic event. So what you have happening spiritually, therefore, is a kind of dynamism between God and the priest and the priest and the people and all the people with all the other people and all the other people all around the world every Sunday and every day who are celebrating this cosmic event. And so a great amount of spiritual energy and spiritual power is released into the world through this relationship that is buzzing around, which is an invisible spiritual relationship in which this cosmic victory of Christ is being made real all over the place. So
Hmm.
if that is withdrawn, of course, evil is going to get a headway. Evil is going to be pushing forward. So, are all the unrest and violence and so forth only linked to that? No, I think it's more complicated than that. But and obviously there have been wars and rumors of wars and unrest and riots at other times when the mass was not suspended. But certainly in places where the church is persecuted and churches are closed, whether it be the Spanish Civil War or the Russian Revolution or the French Revolution or the Chinese Revolution, the evil goes hand in hand with suppressing the mass and killing the priests and closing the churches.
Hmm.
So yeah, there is a link, definitely.
Hmm.
Sorry, it's a long answer.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you clarified because you want to define the thing first before you talk about whether the withdrawal of that thing affects anything else. Padre Pio, I've seen this quote from many times. Padre Pio never wrote books, so it's hard to distinguish fact from fiction. But he said something to the effect that if the Mass were to end on this earth, that the world would implode, something like that. That the Mass
The world will crumble into chaos.
Yeah.
I think the word, yeah. So
Resentment, rivalry, revenge. You see this in groupthink. You see it in Twitter mobs. You see it in the desire to virtue signal. You've got to get behind Black Lives Matter. And if you raise one fillip of objection, then you don't think Black Lives Matter. You've got the slogan pro-choice, which is quite brilliant. Like, what, are you not against, you opposing choice? This is all at the heart of Rene Girard's mimetic desire theory, right? And scapegoating.
yeah, it all ties in with Girard and his theory of mimetic desire. Mimetic desire, again, I call it imitation desire, to try to communicate it a bit more. That means basically, let's say, Patrick, you're my neighbor, okay, and you have a big house and a pool and a nice new Mercedes Benz and a trophy wife, and I don't have all that stuff. And I look at you and I say, well, I wish I had that Mercedes and the trophy wife and the swimming pool and the beach house. But I don't actually, and Gerard picks up, I don't actually want that as much as I want to be you.
Yeah, I want what
and
you
this
want.
is what he calls
Yeah.
my mimetic desire. The envy is a mask or a substitute for the fact that I actually want to be you. I don't want just your stuff. I want to be you. And he then points out when this begins to operate on a tribal level, the resentment towards you and the rivalry towards you must lead to revenge. And this is where Scheller comes in and talks about resentment and analyzes it in his book Ressentiment. And so therefore, it follows that if you are this rival and you have all that stuff, to get all that stuff and to be you, I need to kill you. And therefore, that leads to the scapegoating. You're the cause of my problems. I have to eliminate you because if I want to get rid of my problems and you're the cause of my problems, I therefore have to eliminate you.
Yeah.
And when this operates on a tribal level, you begin to have riots and unrest and revolution and war.
Yeah, and the killing of the king and
not pretty.
Yeah, not pretty well. We can see it. I just watched. You have to be careful now how much
Gerard's brilliant because he goes back and shows how this echoes through various cultures, through various religions, and also through various myths and various literature down through, and that it is kind of this resounding echo in human nature and in human culture, which finds a perfect expression in what happened to our Lord Jesus Christ in Holy Week.
So the me against you becomes all of us against him, and it becomes crystallized to the point where we have to expiate, in a sense, our sins by killing him.
Yeah, the tribe gets together and says, "We have a problem. We're in crisis." That guy is the problem,
Hmm.
not even all his followers. It's that guy, and if we knock him out, everything will be fine again.
Hmm.
And this is what therefore develops the sacrificial system in societies, where this action of eliminating the scapegoat, eliminating the problem, the tribe feels great euphoria after that happens, and they
Right.
celebrate with a meal. And this therefore evolves into a ritualistic religion of sacrifice, where there becomes a priesthood, and the human sacrifice continues. Not the other day, I watched Mel Gibson's Apocalypto,
Great
which is
movie.
a brilliant film,
Yeah.
which shows all of this in action. Um,
Hmm.
the human sacrifice of the Mayans and the Aztecs, which was going on with killing thousands and thousands of victims to try to please their gods. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, this is rich stuff. I'm fascinated by it.
It's the one. It's the one movie that got lost in the shuffle because it came immediately after the Passion of the Christ, and it's also nonstop Mayan language with subtitles. But yeah, it goes to the kind of visual story that you cannot get across in a book.
I know,
Apocalypto
and
would
this
not
is
work in a book.
nobody is defending Mel Gibson's lapses of judgment and wrongdoing. He wouldn't himself, but he's an amazing filmmaker,
Yeah.
and the fact that he has been bold enough, both in Passion of the Christ and in Apocalypse, to have the whole thing in not only a foreign language but a dead language,
Hmm.
um, and therefore the visual storytelling to predominate is a radical step forward in filmmaking. And what he did there, quite apart from the theological and religious mystery of it all, is just from a filmmaker's point of view is pretty
Yeah.
amazing.
Your signal's a little iffy there, and it's better now. Okay. Yeah, I got that. Yeah, that he's a visual storytelling master, no question about it. And it's interesting. I call it the Mel Gibson template. If you analyze the films that he's made over 30 films, I think, with the exception of The Passion of the Christ and What Do Women Want, every other Mel Gibson movie that I can think of has the same basic plot. Good man, wronged in the past. Part of his backstory is that he's been wronged and he's out for blood revenge. Whether it's Payback or Get the Gringo or Edge of Darkness or Patriot or the Lethal Weapon movies or the Mad Max franchise, it's all there. He just keeps Braveheart. He's very much drawn to that revenge, resentment, rivalry insight. And I'm sure he probably hasn't read a lick of Gerard.
It's actually that's the take he has on Hamlet as well. If you see his Zeffirelli's Hamlet, Mel Gibson plays Hamlet,
Yeah.
and he plays Hamlet that way too. So that's an interesting observation.
Mm. M. Scott Peck figures prominently here in your narrative. The convert from Buddhism, Christian psychologist, has written some iffy books. There's some mixed truth in books like The Road Less Traveled. But my favorite book that he wrote, the one that I think is the one he'll be remembered for, is People of the Lie, because that comes at this from a different angle, because it seems to dovetail with what we say is the sin of the world. What are people of the lie?
Yeah, I drew on People of the Lie because it really influenced my life and helped me to see things differently. And basically, Scott Peck in People of the Lie is revealing from his experience as a psychiatrist the kind of people that he would meet, who he determined after a long study and after much hesitation to actually say, no, these people are the people who are truly evil. And the people of the lie are, he sums it up as people who are expert at presenting an external appearance of respectability, usually religion, good manners, wealth, connection, all this great stuff. But underneath it all, they're deeply evil people because they always have a victim in their life. They always have a black sheep. They always have a scapegoat. They always have some other person or some other tribe on whom they project their evil. That person becomes the scapegoat for all that they do. And he gives various case histories to show this, which are quite chilling.
Yeah.
And This, therefore, I use as an example of the people of the line and say, look, these people are all around us, and they're in the mirror too, if you look hard enough. And these are the hypocrites who are constantly huge amounts of psychic time and
Yeah.
energy and money and whatever else to prop up this image, this external image of the
Yes.
good person. But underneath it all, extremely duplicitous and totally lacking in compassion.
Your connection, once again, I apologize, folks, is poor. I think you're on a Wi-Fi that's far from the router. I think I got the gist. Yeah, this is we're talking malignant narcissism, right? That
Yes.
it's never their fault. There's no personal accountability. I just watched a very
No.
disturbing documentary called Filthy Rich on Jeffrey Epstein. Like
Okay.
glazed donuts,
Right.
no sorrow, no repentance,
Right.
no conscience qualm, just
No,
self
no.
worship.
Yeah, total egotism and total narcissism, and also very, very expert in deflecting criticism, self-defense, and projecting onto others. Um, Scott Peck tells about the story when he confronted the parents of a teenage boy who had been sent to him for treatment, and they were the people of the lie. And when he began to criticize them, guess what? They're respectable suburban people, right? Guess what? Mama turns on the waterworks. Oh, Dr. Peck, we thought you were going to help our son, and it turns out you're blaming us for the problems. And Papa pulls out the checkbook and says, Dr. Peck, thank you very much for your time, but I think we need to find someone who's more professional than you are.
Right.
So all the nice manners and the emotion and everything, but really just putting the knives in and then taking the boy away and victimizing him further with their psychological blackmail and all the rest of it.
And don't we see this tribalism and this deflection of responsibility and accountability in the factions of the Catholic Church? You have trad versus progressive. You have mostly you have trad versus trad in my limited experience. I am the white knight. I have the secret code. I'm going to change. I'm going to save the church. You, sir, are a heretic or whatever.
This is why I'm so passionate about this book and why I just had to get it out there. And because this dynamic, this syndrome of the people of the lie, it's everywhere. It's in the church. It's within subsets within the church. It's within every religion. It's within the military. It's within the business world. It's certainly within politics. It's within every aspect of human life. And because it's the people of the lie, because we lie about it and we deceive ourselves and in deceiving other people, we're blind to it. We can't see it. This is why in the book, I keep trying to say, look, it's you. It's you. Oh, I'm not like that.
Yeah.
You just proved my point.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. The defense is the evidence.
Yeah.
In some ways,
in the second half of the book, I do actually try to say, here's what we can do about it. And the second half of the book is a statement of why the cross defeats this evil, and it's the only thing that could defeat it, and how the Christian faith is supposed to be living the cross. St. Paul says we preach Christ crucified, and he says, for me to live as Christ, to die as gain. I've been crucified with Christ. What does that mean? It basically means that day by day we're meant to be living the solution to this whole thing.
And we see this longing for that solution in disparate sources in literature, in mythology. To me, the heart of the book, then, which you turn from the mythological and the literary to the sacramental, is the secret son. This plot line that keeps recurring of someone who's destined to defeat overwhelming evil. He comes from an anonymous place of mysterious origins. You see it in Luke Skywalker. You see it in Clark Kent, Peter Parker. My T-shirt that I got from my good friend and Nationista John Ratchford. This is, if you can see that, it's Jesus on a beam, and there's Spider-Man and the Hulk and Captain America, Superman, and he's saying, "And this is how I save the world."
Right.
Superheroes are kind of substitute saviors, right? They have human nature and divine nature. Spider-Man even gets tempted by the Green Goblin on the top of the temple / building. Bow down and worship me. I'll give you all these kingdoms.
Right. And the superhero stories are the myths of our day. They fight horrible, beastly monsters, just like the Greek myths. And I think the reason they're so popular is because they are, as Joseph Campbell would affirm as well, they're echoing all the deep stuff within human nature, within our own hearts,
Mm-hmm.
which we know to be true. And it's a sadness to me that in our preaching of the gospel, we have not actually capitalized on this great myth that's there. When I say myth, I don't mean myth like, oh, it's a story, it never happened.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying these deep truths that are revealed to us through stories. I've just put an article out on Crisis Magazine. I think it's coming out this week, which is called "It's Time to Re-Mythologize the Faith,"
Mm-hmm.
to be able to use some of these connections. And whenever I do, and use popular culture and Greek myth, people always they love it, and they soak it up. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's an evidence that this is some deep stuff here and true stuff.
You have a unique perspective as a married man with the dispensation from celibacy, and you celebrate Mass every day. And I wanted to ask you, given the fact that the holy sacrifice of the Mass is the solution here, the death of Christ represented, we're now participating with the angels and saints in this cosmic expulsion, if you will, of evil and the influx of resurrection life. Why is it important to have liturgical finery, to have things done right, just and so? Not that you want to become, uptight or pharisaical, but
Right.
the importance of reverence that surrounds the sacred mystery.
Well, I touch on this in the other book that just came out this year called Letters on Liturgy, which came out in February.
Mm-hmm.
And what I say in there is that a ceremonial and ritualistic celebration of the Mass, which is done with traditional vestments and with a ceremonial actions at the Mass, with bowing at the proper time and taking time to wash your hands and to be able to speak in a formal manner to the congregation, all of this ceremonial um, actually unlocks the subconscious and the deeper areas of our life. Now, and if the priest celebrates it with, "Hey, look at me, I'm Father Bob," and did you have a great time at the ball game last week, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Father Bob's personality then interrupts what is meant to be going on.
Mm-hmm.
And in the deeps, when a religious service is ritualistic and ceremonial, it therefore unlocks those deeper areas of our life. If there's beauty there, beauty unlocks that area of our life. If there's beautiful music, beautiful organ music, beautiful architecture, all these things open up the deepest recesses of the human heart to the working of God and to the working of God's mystery. That's why we celebrate the Mass we do. Not because Father likes to wear lacy things and then pretty embroidery. No, it's not
Right.
about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because he really likes that artsy fartsy stained glass window stuff.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Mm-hmm.
the language of worship is beauty. Beauty is the language of worship, and therefore a ritual which is ceremonially beautiful with beautiful music opens up areas of the human heart which cannot be opened up in any other way. This is the reason why the travesty of the modernistic celebrations of the Mass are so bad. Not because they're bad taste, and not because Father Bob is a bit of a jerk. It's not any of those things. It's because they blank out this deeper action of what should be going on when the Mass is celebrated in a beautiful and reverent manner.
So the main thing is no longer made the main thing.
Right. Something else is intruded. And in Letters on Liturgy, I talk about this and say anything that intrudes to the solemnity of the meaning of the Mass is extraneous, even if it's extremely beautiful. So if the people go out from Mass saying, "Oh, wasn't that Palestrina motet wonderful today?" No, that was excessive, because that also distracted just as much as people singing "Bind Us Together" or some
Mm-hmm.
awful sort of campfire song.
Jerry, right. Jerry Goldsmith, who wrote hundreds of movie soundtracks, said that if the audience leaves the theater humming his soundtrack, he's failed, because it's supposed to be invisibly embedded and suffusing all the action. Imagine someone coming out of Jaws saying, "I love that John Williams bass note."
Yeah,
That was very,
exactly.
the one is supposed to.
And that's beautiful, because it's the same thing we learned in script writing school, that everything in the film contributes to that one magic moment when the heart opens and the audience says, "Aha."
Yeah,
Got
right.
it. Amazing. And there should be one moment like that in the movie. Maybe if you can manage more than one, you're terrific. But if you have one moment like that in the movie, everything in the movie, the music, the costumes, the makeup, the script, everything, the cinematography contributes to that moment. Likewise, in the Mass, the moment is, "Behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world." If anything distracts from that moment,
Cut
it's
it out.
extraneous. Yeah.
Yeah. As Strunk and White said, omit needless words.
Yeah.
How would you distill 3 takeaways for us?
From Immortal Combat, I
Mm-hmm.
would. The first takeaway is, can we try to strive to understand what we mean by the sin of the world? It's not just the naughty things you've done, it's this deep network of evil that I talk about. The second takeaway is the cross of our Lord Jesus Christ is the cosmic event in the center of time, which we're the only thing that could defeat that evil. And the third one is, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to live that crucifixion moment, that cosmic moment, not just at the Mass, but also the
Mm-hmm.
rest of what we do as Catholics?
I always learn an enormous amount when we talk, Father Dwight. I want to thank you for your priesthood, for your work, and for being with us on this TransformU. I appreciate it very much. I know our members do too.
Thank you very much. Sorry for talking too much.
Oh, that's okay. Way better than the other extreme. Yes, no.
Okay.
Roger that. Okay, we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
You can find all the resources and links, including Father's website, InsideCoffinNation.com. So in the meantime, be a saint. What else is there?